Hello YouTube, I'm Vince White. I'm an employment attorney, and on this channel we answer publicly posted questions. Let me raise this up a little bit so I don't look like I'm staring down at you. We answer publicly posted questions from YouTube users, getting folks the answer they need from an employment attorney. My hair is crazy today, but the Chrysler building is in fine form. And we have a question from YouTube user Curiosity, I believe. Curiosity, either one, who asked us, "Hi Vincent, thank you for your candidness on your channel. I think I've been a little too candid. I think people are getting a little salty with me, but I'll see what I can do. It has been a go-to resource for me for the last few months. Awesome, that makes me happy. I don't think you've answered this question before, but it was yesterday in my NLRB, National Labor Relations Board, case. My NLRB representative, a lawyer, informed me that the employer is being uncooperative, so we are doing another affidavit. This NLRB representative is also representing other employees with other charges. Could you break this down for me? I'm assuming uncooperative means they're not responding at all, which is not surprising considering the former employer and their general MO, modus operandi. My question, is this a tactical move by the chief legal officer and part owner that will hurt our case, or is the chief legal officer just that dumb? Also, should I file with the EEOC about the fact that women were paid less in general, and I was the lowest paid woman amongst them, despite my great wealth of experience? I found this out just recently. I hope you answered. Here we are. I love your videos. Thank you. P.S. The chief legal officer had the VP of sales go to a coworker's child custody case and make statements on their ex's behalf after the chief legal officer stated in writing in an email if the severance offer wasn't accepted, they were going to make the custody hearing more difficult. My former coworker wrote a letter to the Bar Association. Is there a chance they, the employer, are not responding because they're having some representation issues? I wouldn't be mad about it. It seems really messed up that they did that, and I hope there is disbarment in the chief legal officer's future. I wouldn't count on it. Okay, so I'm going to take the easy question first. You're first wondering, could there be some representation issues? Could they be having difficulty finding representation? Generally speaking, and I'm going to confirm everybody's nasty comments about attorneys. Generally speaking, let's turn on the light here. Let's say, oh, is that better? Maybe, maybe not. Is that better? No, that's not better. Fine. We're doing it live. All right. So, it's unlikely they're having difficulty finding representation unless they're unwilling to pay for representation. Unwilling or incapable, right? And everybody's gonna be like, oh, attorneys, money hungry, scumbags, this, that. Functionally, I mean, yeah, defense, I mean, listen, I'm not saying that's just defense attorneys, but like, if you have money, you will find a defense attorney to represent you. I had an associate years ago, obviously not gonna name this person, tremendous attorney, one of the best attorneys who ever worked for me, so much smarter than me, so much more talented. She had worked as a trauma, rape counselor before going to law school. And she took a job going defense side because, women are really important when it comes to defending sexual harassment cases, and defense firms will pay them 3-4x what we pay them, and it's all guaranteed. Whereas if you're working on our side of the aisle, you actually have to win your money, right? And I remember her saying to me, gee, do you think they're going to make me defend sexual harassment cases? I don't want to do that. And I think I was a bit patronizing at the time. I was like, what do you think they're hiring you for? Listen, you're a great attorney, but there's a lot of great attorneys in the world. You're a great attorney who happens to be a woman, young and attractive. So you're going to be a great attorney, and that's really important, but you're also going to be demographically what they need sitting at the table with the bad guy who does the bad thing when it comes to sexual harassment, right? That's part of this gig for you, they're excited about the fact that you were like a rape counselor. They're gonna be like, that's gonna come up in your cases. They're gonna be like, as a, trying to bring that up, and hard to bring that in because attorney is not part of the case, but like that's something they're looking for. That's what they want you for, right? So I say this not to mock her. I'm sure she's doing great, and I'm sure she's found a way to help people. But I'm kind of making the point that defense attorneys will always take the case if they're getting paid, right? And attorneys deal with this by saying, well, everybody deserves representation. I mean, listen, a murderer still deserves to be represented. True. Fair. I don't know how well that logic jumps into our civil world, right? That's more of a criminal attorney get out of jail free card, so to speak. That's how the criminal attorneys will. Well, sure, he kidnapped some kids and maybe committed genocide, but everybody deserves representation. And I see how the criminal attorneys get away with it because you're pushing back against the state, and the state has a tremendous amount of power. So even if the person is guilty, you still want to protect their rights, right? In civil court, I don't know how well that logic holds together necessarily. And I mean, listen, I've certainly lost friends for things I've said on this channel, right? Like, defense attorney be like, hey, did you really? I mean, do you really think of me as somebody who defends, workplace rapists? I'm not gonna use a name here, but like, Bobo, what did you do last month? Are you asking me if I think of you as somebody who defends people who attempt rape in the workplace? I mean, again, what did you do last month, Bobo? How much money did you make last month representing the person who attempted to rape the person in the workplace, right? Like, well, it's not a question of my perception of you, Bobo. It's a question of what you did and what you made, right? Like, this is not like a subjective thing. Like, you did it, Yes, Bobo. Yes, I do think you represent the bad people. Yes. So, no, I don't think they're having trouble getting representation. We'll set that part aside. Assuming if they can pay or will pay for representation, they can get representation. Now, I think the core of your question, is this a tactical move by the chief legal officer that will hurt our case, or is the chief legal officer that dumb? Unsatisfying answer is, I don't know. So, I have dealt with many incredibly stupid chief legal officers, like a lot of attorneys. We've had some amazing in-house attorneys. We've had Ivan on this channel, who is an incredibly talented in-house counsel who does tremendous work and like is very smart and well-meaning and sincere in how he approaches all these things, right? And that is often the case with in-house counsel. Like, you get some real amazing people who go into in-house counsel roles at companies. It can pay really great. The quality of life is much better than what I do, frankly, right? Not what I do specifically, but like for my quality of life is pretty amazing. But the average plaintiff's attorney working a caseload, especially like a solo practitioner, that quality of life can be, we'll just call it low, just to be frank, right? So, yeah, in-house counsels, it's often just people who like wake up and they're like, you know what? Corporate life's not all bad. I get to go home at 5. And if I don't want to do a job, I just hire an attorney with my legal budget to do the job for me. And like, that can be great. But also, chief legal officers are sometimes people who like couldn't cut it, right? I'm not going to talk about teachers in general, but professors in law school are generally going to be people who like couldn't cut it in the practice of law. So they're essentially people who like have a fancy degree from an Ivy League and couldn't cut it. Those are the two components of a law professor, generally speaking. which is why law school doesn't teach us how to practice law. It teaches a little bit how to pass the bar, but not even that really. You have to pay for a separate course probably to pass the bar. Most people do. It kind of like teaches you some kind of questionable theories about law, like the Supreme Court is arguing precedent and making these deeply thought out findings. False. No, the Supreme Court's a pressure valve. It looks at public sentiment and makes decisions based on what it can get away with, and in a way that the legislature can't really do because it's a larger body, right? Like, no, there's no, like, the Supreme Court is just a machine that contradicts itself based on which way the wind is blowing, right? There's no legal argument to it. There's no, like, well, but they said in 1902. No, that's not a thing. That's not a thing. It's nonsense. You're talking nonsense. You're teaching nonsense, right? You can see that. Any review of the history reflects that. There's no intelligent human beings like, well, Judge Marshall. No. What can you get away with today? That's what the Supreme Court is. So, a lot of digressions today. What am I? Have I taken too long off? I gotta get to the point. So, I'm not saying that an in-house counsel is going to be incompetent, but they can, and I do see this a lot. There's people who go hide in-house for the same reasons that somebody might go hide in law school as a professor, right? Practice law is hard. I'd rather just go work corporate, and if I have an actual legal problem, hire an actual litigation attorney to do this for me, right? So there are those chief legal officers and general counsels, whatever you want to call them, who exist. So could it be incompetence? Yes, absolutely. 50% chance it's incompetence. Is it some kind of masterful tactical move? Maybe. I mean, the NLRB, there's a couple of things going on there that complicates things. One, the NLRB is overwhelmed. It's not quite as overwhelmed as the EEOC, in that the NLRB still does some things sometimes. But I could see an in-house counsel being like, I bet you if I ignore these, it's going to buy me some time, or maybe nothing will happen, or maybe this case will die in the vine, or maybe the NLRB will just hit us with some fines and it won't be that bad. So, like, that could be something you're doing. There could also be litigation you're not aware of, or even litigation that you are aware of, because you're mentioning other cases here, that is more valuable or presents a bigger risk to the company than the NLRB case, right? So the NLRB, first off, has a weird thing they do where they force settlement. They just decide there's a settlement. Like, and you're the plaintiff, the complainant might just be like, oh, I didn't agree to that. And the NLRB are like, yeah, we agreed for you. We didn't ask you. We're not interested. Your case is settled. This is what you get. And the complainant might be like, well, I don't want to settle. I definitely don't want to settle for that, and I don't want to settle at all. And they're just like, well, it's settled. Too bad. That's the thing that happens in the NLRB. It's the thing you have to be aware of. It's a very shocking thing to many, many people. So, like, it's possible the chief legal officer's, like, trying to frustrate that by not conversing, or is hoping that will happen, right? And that the case will just be settled out of laziness from government officials. That's something that could be going on. But I think one of my concerns, and I kind of gave voice to this before, but I walked away from it. I want to come back to it. There could be a really high-risk case, like a huge liability for the company, somewhere in the mix, somewhere else. And complying with the NLRB could potentially unearth documentation that would matter to that litigation. And it's possible that your chief legal officer, if she or he is a genius, could be looking at the attorney on the high risk, the high liability case that could be worth, let's just call it tens of millions of dollars. We don't know. We don't know what that case could be, right? He might be looking at that case, he or he, and might say, hey, the attorneys on that high liability case, they're a little lazy. And they might not do the most in discovery. So there's a chance, through their laziness or incompetence of these plaintiffs' attorneys on this high liability case, there's a chance the things that I'd like to hide might not come out, right? If I bury them in docs, they might not read all the documents. Many firms don't, horrifically enough. Now, by the same token, if that chief legal officer fights all these NLRB cases, any one of you or any one of the investigators from the NLRB could start looking at things. And this is what could be happening, right? I don't have the answers for you. This is a could be. This is something to think about. And one of you with your NLRB claims could have a great investigator, or one of you could be a very proactive, detail-oriented person who should probably become an employment attorney, or one of you might have a great attorney. You don't know what's in the mix, right? And that one of you, in any given those situations, right, might find the things and put together the things required to make that other high liability case blow up huge, right? So it might make sense for the chief legal officer to eat the fines on the NLRB cases for being uncooperative. Like, oh, what's the worst case? What's the NLRB really? She or he might be thinking, I might eat $30,000 fines for being uncooperative in the NLRB on all 8 of these NLRB cases. And that might slightly reduce the risk of this super high liability case blowing up in my face. And that might be worth it. That might be a good deal. And I kind of say this, and I don't know the answers here, right? I don't know what's going on. But I say this because you're talking about a systemic Liddy Ledbetter equal pay claim, right? Like, you're saying women are paid less in general at equal levels than their male counterparts in my company, and like me especially, right? And you're asking if you should file that case in the EEOC. Yes, you should absolutely file that case in the EEOC. But when you tell me that's the case, it makes me think there could be a class action, or there could be fear of a class action. Some plaintiff's attorney somewhere might be saying, hey, you can pay my client 7 figures, or she could become a class rep. I can mess you up with every single woman in your company. What's your preference, right? Or somebody could be trying to put together a class right now, right? There's all these things that be going on. If that's the situation, if every single woman in your company has a claim because there's this pay gap issue, that could be huge. And I suspect it could be much larger in terms of the liability and the risk for the company than an NLRB claim might necessarily be, especially given recent behavior out of the NLRB. It's getting much more activist, but generally speaking, it's not nuking employers these days, right? Like, it's a very measured approach. We'll be kind to the NLRB with that. So, yeah, could be incompetence. Could be some kind of strategy. Could be you're not the priority. And anything they can do to reduce risk on this other potentially huge case that could be out there might be worth it to them, and that could be what's going on. So, Curiosity Corner, I hope this video helped you. I hope this kind of like introduced some things to think about, maybe some things to look for. Maybe it's time to start, digging a little bit and seeing what's going on. But it could inform some of your strategies in the near future. And I very much hope that you do bring your EEOC case for the unequal pay. I hope that you are successful in your NLRB action. And I hope that you get paid big time and that you win the sun, the moon, the stars, and that all the money comes raining down on you and you right the wrongs. That would make me very happy. So, like, subscribe, comment down below. If this was helpful, I will check the comments. If I failed you in some way, I will look for that and try to make you a follow-up video. Remember, almost everybody works. Not everybody wins. Got to be smart out there.